if you are out there committing violence, as I said, if you're damaging property, those cases are going to be prosecuted. If you are a person who is out there demonstrating and you get caught up in the melee and you get arrested for that because you are out there having your voice heard, those are the types of cases we're talking about.
Jimmy. An Oregon District Attorney announcing he will not prosecute Portland protesters who have been recently arrested for non-violent charges. This as the city saw its 75th straight night of protests. President Trump telling Sean Hannity it needs to stop.
But we can have the National Guard go in and clean out Portland in a matter of hours, less than hours. But they have to ask us for that, and they don't want to ask. And it's not because they're too proud. It's because they truly don't have a clue as to what's happening.
Let's bring in Lieutenant Randy Sutton, 33-year law enforcement veteran and founder of the Wounded Blue. What do you make of the DA announcing, first of all, the protesters who have been arrested? Obviously, they were arrested for a crime, non-violent charges during recent demonstrations, but nonetheless a crime in Portland will no longer be prosecuted. What kind of message does that send?
Well, that's a complete surrender of the criminal justice system. You know, I read the policy by Mr. Schmidt. It reads
complete surrender. Can you back that up, please?
More like a political manifesto.
Back this up.
A complete surrender of the criminal justice system.
A complete?
Well, that's a complete surrender of the criminal justice system. That's a complete surrender of the criminal justice system.
That Harris stand for is not what America wants. I've never met anybody who said, oh boy, if only Joe Biden was out there. I mean, even the...
Sorry about that.
The district attorney says that he will not prosecute many of those demonstrators who have recently been arrested for breaking the law. Now they're getting away scot-free. We're going to ask a veteran cop what message that sends.
Now to find out if you're eligible for a Medicare Advantage plan that includes to find out if 8.
If you are out there committing violence, as I said, if you're damaging property, those cases are going to be prosecuted. If you are a person who is out there demonstrating and you get caught up in the melee and you get arrested for that because you are out there having your voice heard, those are the types of cases we're talking about.
Jimmy. An Oregon District Attorney announcing he will not prosecute Portland protesters who have been recently arrested for non-violent charges. This as the city saw its 75th straight night of protests. President Trump telling Sean Hannity it needs to stop.
But we can have the National Guard go in and clean out Portland in a matter of hours, less than hours. But they have to ask us for that, and they don't want to ask. And it's not because they're too proud. It's because they truly don't have a clue as to what's happening.
Let's bring in Lieutenant Randy Sutton, 33-year law enforcement veteran and founder of the Wounded Blue. What do you make of the DA announcing, first of all, the protesters who have been arrested? Obviously, they were arrested for a crime, non-violent charges during recent demonstrations, but nonetheless a crime in Portland will no longer be prosecuted. What kind of message does that send?
Well, that's a complete surrender of the criminal justice system. You know, I read the policy by Mr. Schmidt. It reads more like a political manifesto than it does a criminal justice policy. And the statement that
Oh, we got a manifesto. We have a manifesto, Mr. Tommy Moore, sir, the judge here in Weakley County. They accused me for 30-something years of me putting out a manifesto. And obviously the people around here don't understand the difference between your testimony of you telling the facts of that in which what has occurred or that in which what you have been through. They obviously don't understand the difference between a manifesto and a testimony. If you'll go back and read what it talks about in Revelations of the two witnesses, that they held their testimonies in their hands, it doesn't say that they held their manifestos in their hands. It says they held their testimonies in their hands. How you gonna hold your testimony in your hand? It's called the 21st century technology. It's called digital smartphone data. That's how you hold your testimonies in your hands. In other words, you can go back and dialogue my Facebook and my YouTube platforms, and that is my testimony, not my manifesto that I was accused of in front of the courts that Tommy Moore, Mr. Judge Tommy Moore, the residing judge here in Weakley County, stood in and on his bench and said, Dennis, they was accusing you of coming out with a manifesto. A manifesto is something totally different than your testimony. Listen to the rest of this, please, as they're describing to you about what's going on in unrest pertaining to Portland, Oregon. I've been there. I've been to Portland, Oregon. Portland, Oregon, I hate to say it, but it's a grubby city. There's a lot of, I really hate to use the word filth, but it's a filthy little town, a filthy city, pertaining to their streets, their garbage bins, pertaining to the way that their buildings look, pertaining to the way that their streets look. Now, this was the area that I was in. There may be an area in Portland, Oregon that looks just as prestige as some of the ritzy areas in Nashville or Memphis. But the area that I was in looked slummy. It looked slummy, and of course, whenever you're dealing with a bunch of tree huggers, environmentalists, owl lovers, people that just within just recent years or two that wouldn't even let you even pump your own gas. You had to have somebody certified to come out and pump your gas in Oregon. Up until just within a year or so, I think they changed the law on that. But listen to this, please.
He just said that you erred. It's a complete fabrication. It's a lie. Let me read what the policy actually really does say. Schmidt directed deputy district attorneys to consider whether or not the person charged was in pain, unable to hear, breathe, or see at the moment of the resistance for the crimes: resisting arrest, assault on a police officer, arson. All of these are what he is. In fact, what he said is all offenses of disorderly conduct, interference with a police officer, escape, harassment, and criminal trespass will be summarily dismissed. This is in actuality.
I mean,
this is a criminal justice system in free fall.
That's putting it lightly. I mean, protesters, they can still be charged with theft or use of force. But here's the kicker: not for interfering with a police officer or rioting.
Right.
I mean, how in the world
Right.
are police officers supposed to do their jobs if they're supposed to stop rioters, but now the rioters that push back on those police officers are just given a slap on the wrist, and quite frankly, they're not given anything. They're given a free pass. I mean, this does give rioters a free pass, does it not?
Absolutely it does. In fact, riot is one of the charges that they are not prosecuting on. Meanwhile, we have police officers who have been injured in the line of duty on multiple occasions. We have individuals who are trying to set them on fire, and this district attorney is refusing to prosecute. When I read the policy, when I saw what he actually said, this is actually just a slap in the face to the Portland Police Department, who have already had their wings clipped by the mayor, who is proclaimed himself police commissioner. Meanwhile, officers are being severely injured in the line of duty, not getting any attention. That's why my organization, the Wounded Blue, exists to help men and women like this. But we are seeing this district attorney is absolutely
outrageous.
become a political animal.
All right.
This isn't about justice.
It is. All right. Lieutenant Randy Sutton, that's all the time we have. We appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Thank you
Big
so
name
much.
Democrats praising the Biden-Harris ticket, though not everyone's on board. Why some progressives are...
I want to back up just a minute real quick in what they're talking about here. Because
Slap in the face.
everything that this guy is talking about is not only true to the extent of what he's talking about, but it should actually be added to. They have recently announced in Nashville that acts such as this should be deemed as attempted murder. Because whenever you're purposely burning a building down, knowing that there's people in the building, you're taking a chance on whoever's in that building not getting out and killing that person. Whenever you're taking a chance on doing stuff knowing that you could not only harm, hurt, but you could kill somebody, you need to be charged for that. These are homegrown terrorism type acts that obviously the commissioner or whoever it was that made that announcement a while ago must have lost his freaking mind in not wanting to persecute the people who have been engaged in these type of activities. This has been going on now for 75 days. Count it up. There's 31 days in a month. 30 and 30 count 60. 60 plus 30 is 90. This has almost went on for a 3-month period, and today they're still doing what they're doing. The same way up in Chicago, the same way in New York City, the same way in other parts of this nation where looting, robbing, and raping is going unattended. Now, the mayor in Atlanta, as far as I know, has still got active National Guard members out on the streets because she realizes that her police department was in trouble, especially whenever she had such of a venue of people stepping up to the plate wanting to either quit or retire from the police department. This is chaotic. This is mayhem, and I hate to say it, but Trump is right. It needs to stop. Somehow or another, it needs to stop because eventually people is not just going to get hurt, but they're going to get killed. And if you can't micromanage and dissect the problem to the point of still having safety and security out on the streets to the point that it's a safe environment to live in, then the politicians that's been elected and those that's working for the politicians all needs to be arrested. They need to go home. If they cannot create a safe environment for the rest of the citizens in that area, and it doesn't matter if it's in Portland, Oregon, it doesn't matter if it's in Timbuktu, whenever you have constant burning, constant looting, constant people, an uprising, constant people, there's a right way and a wrong way to protest, and there's a difference between a protester and a looter. That's what they don't understand up there. And, you know, you got a lot of immigrants that's come in to that area up in Washington State and Oregon that probably is a contributing factor to their problem. But I just want to bring this out. The other night, I seen where they had disembarked onto a police station in Chicago, and they was holding up signs that the system was holding them hostage, or the system had imploded up onto that particular group of people to the point of giving them the right to go loot, rob, and I guess rape and murder. Which is another crazy ideal for anybody to even think of, because they was using the justifiable reasons was, well, they all got insurance. They all have insurance, okay? There has been over $68 million worth of destruction and merchandise stolen from the Chicago streets alone, just within the past month or so, because of all the looting and the outlandish behavior. $68 million. Do you know what we can do with $68 million? We can feed the hungry. We can feed the homeless. We can help the elderly. We can do scientific projects toward trying to create medicines. We can do a lot with $68 million, believe it or not. $68 million would go a long, long way in today's society towards actually helping society rather than hurting society. So whenever someone like this guy here stands on national TV and makes a speech, and I'm going to let you hear it one more time, it's absolutely asinizing to the system that he's supposed to be embracing pertaining to bringing safety and security to the land. Please listen to this one more time.
If you are out there committing violence, as I said, if you're damaging property, those cases are going to be prosecuted. If you are a person who is out there demonstrating and you get caught up in the melee and you get arrested for that because you are out there having your voice heard, those are the types of cases we're talking about.
Cue me. An Oregon District Attorney announcing he will not prosecute Portland protesters who have been recently arrested for non-violent charges. This as the city.
So basically what he just got through doing was giving them a green light, telling them y'all can continue on doing what you're doing, because there's not going to be no heavy retribution on the count of what you're doing. In the meantime, whenever you have 50 over here in this group, 25 over here in this group, 125 over here in this group, it's hard to determine towards who's actually breaking the glass and catching the building on fire versus who's just watching the person break the glass and catching the building on fire. You have total anarchy is what you have here.
Saw its 75th straight night of protests. President Trump telling Sean Hannity it needs to stop.
But we can have the National Guard go in and clean out Portland in a matter of hours.
To me, this is this is my opinion about this. I realize that you can't call in federal troops. Federal troops are people with the big tanks. Federal troops are the people that fly the Nighthawks and the fighter jets. Federal troops are basically those who have been heavily trained in combat activity. But we have state troops. We have a thing called National Guard. National Guard works on an independent state per state ordeal. It's up to the governor to call out whenever total anarchy like this has been going on. Especially, we're not talking about 7 hours of this. We're not talking about 7 days of this. We're talking about over 75 days of this has been going on. You can't tell me that women and children, especially the elderly, have reached the point of people living in that type of environment, just like living in Baghdad or Chicago or anywhere else there's violence like that. You can't tell me that those people are scared to death to even open up their doors, much less get out and go check the mail or mow their yard or wash their automobile or do whatever else that needs to be done either in the daytime or the nighttime. It's an environment of chaos. It's an environment of toxicity. It's lethal. And instead of this wording up here, if this guy really wants my support, I do agree with about 2/3 of what he's saying right here. But right here, they need to take out but